Okay, good morning, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 2 minutes after 10 o'clock. I'd also like to recognize that we are conducting this meeting on the traditional territories of the Shot First Nation and Chesed First Nation. Letting everybody know that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube to the Regional District website. And as it's a new year and our first meeting of 2025, we do have to elect a new chair and vice chair for the committee. Oh, sure. Okay. We'll do a roundtable introductions first, starting with Cindy.
Good morning, everybody. Cindy Solda, City of Port Alberni.
Good morning, Sarah Darling, City of Port Alberni.
Good morning, Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services for the Regional District.
Good morning, I'm Dave Arsenault from the City of Port Alberni.
Great, thank you, everybody. And then we'll go online, starting with Marcy.
Good morning, Marcy DeWitt. I'm calling in today from the territories of the Yukon Flats, and I'm the coordinator for the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network.
And Amber.
Amber Severinson, here in Port Alberni.
Thank you. And Nicole.
Nicole Uselman, Executive Director for the Port Alberni Association for Community Living.
Thank you. Jamie.
Hi, Jamie Tatry, Accessibility Committee member.
Thank you. And last but not least, Eddie.
Maybe least. Eddie Kunderman, I'm the operations manager here at the Regional District.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So, as I mentioned, we do have to elect a new chair. So at this time, I will call for nominations for a chairperson of the Accessibility Committee for 2025. Anyone want to nominate anybody?
Is Cindy willing to stay on as chair?
Yes, she is. Okay, so we have one nomination. We'll call for nominations for a second time. Nobody else? Have to do a third? Okay, and a third call for nominations? Okay. Great. So just the one nomination, so we don't have to hold an election. So I hereby declare Cindy Solda the chair of the Accessibility Committee for 2025. And then we do have to elect a vice chairperson. So at this time, I'll call for nominations for a vice chairperson of the Accessibility Committee.
I'll nominate Nicole.
Nicole, do you accept that nomination? Great. And I will call for a second time nominations for vice chairperson. Okay, and a third call. Great. So at this time, I will declare Nicole the vice chair of the Accessibility Committee for 2025. And I'll pass the meeting over to Cindy.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just playing with the buttons on the intercom here. Anyways, so let's continue. We seem to have a full agenda here. So any additions to the agenda? Anybody have any additions they want to add to the agenda? And for staff, any additions at all? Okay, approval of the agenda.
I didn't read the agenda, but I did have something that I wanted to maybe be other.
Sure, what do you want to add?
It was just a question about emergency planning and having plans for ensuring people who have disabilities or that need help that they're accounted for if there's ever like a big evacuation, that kind of thing.
Sounds good. So we'll add it under number 10 under late business.
Sure.
Anybody else have anything else to add? Okay, yes, go ahead, Nicole.
Sorry, Heather, I don't know if should I be adding the training, the proposal, or is that something you're going to bring directly?
I'm gonna speak to it, during one of my reports later on.
Good enough, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, somebody want to move the agenda with the addition?
Yep, I'll move that.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Jamie.
Jamie, sorry, Jamie. And
That's okay.
somebody want to second it? Okay, thank you, Nicole. All in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Anybody have any declarations? Did we get lots of money handed to us or anything like that? No, okay. Let's carry on. Minutes. So accessibility committee meeting held on May 14th. I need a motion to adopt. Nicole, second. Jamie, any more discussion on it? All in favor? I'm assuming everybody's saying yes. Opposed? Motion carried. And minutes for the accessibility meeting held December 10th, 2024. And the reason we're going so far back is because we didn't have a quorum. So we're just cleaning up some business here. Okay, so somebody want to adopt the December 10th, 2024 accessibility committee meeting minutes? Jamie, and second. And it is Amber. Yes, thank you. Sorry, Amber. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. And Vida, welcome. We have a joiner. Okay, and next. December 17th, 2024. Somebody want to move the accessibility committee meeting minutes to be adopted for December 17th, 2024. Vida, and second. Nicole, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Let's just go, I'm just going to go right to oppose. Anybody oppose them? And motion carried. Petitions, delegations, and presentations. Let's go to correspondence for information. Go ahead.
Thank you. So as you remember at the December 10th accessibility committee meeting, the committee passed a resolution to request that the board of directors send a letter to the provincial accessibility committee regarding accessible or lack of accessibility at Sprout Lake Provincial Park. So the boards did send that letter. And the correspondence that I put in the agenda is just the response received back from the accessibility directorate. So they've acknowledged our letter and indicated where the letter has gone to. And then if there's further response, which I anticipate there will be, we'll bring it back to the committee so we can hear what their response is and what their plan of action is.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Everybody's good? Let us go to reports. City of Port Alberni Master Plan Update presentation. And go ahead, David. David, somebody else just joined us. Maybe you could introduce yourself and so she'll know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair and Committee, for inviting me to speak. I'm Dave Arsenault. I'm with the City of Port Alberni. I'm a professional engineer with the infrastructure services team. I've been with the city for about a year. I was hired into a project management position. One of the main roles of the position is to be the lead for developing the city's master plans and to help implement those once adopted. So I'm going to start off with explaining a little bit about what the master plans are. Okay. So recognizing that not everybody would necessarily be familiar with what a master plan is in a municipal context. It's not something that the city of Port Alberni has done a lot of in the past. It's pretty common at large municipalities. We have done master plans for a few specific services and programs in the past, but the city now is working on developing fairly comprehensive master plans for all of our major programs and departments. So this schematic here is intended to show a relationship between different levels of strategic planning at a municipal government. At the top level, we have the official community plan, which is an ongoing project at the city, our update to the 2007 OCP. I understand we're getting very close to completing that and having a draft OCP ready to present to council. But that's a high level of community-wide planning that's mandated by the province, has certain mandatory elements, and it's mainly intended to develop the long-term vision for the committee as a whole, particularly in regards to growth and development. Where the city intends to grow, what type of growth, what type of land use, residential versus commercial industrial, where we want to protect environmental lands, and also to identify the important pieces of public infrastructure that are needed to support that development. So things like major transportation upgrades, additional parks, additional schools, things like that are identified in the OCP plan. And basically, it's a commitment that in order to allow that growth, these other things need to be in place that are identified in this plan. And once it's adopted, that's essentially binding to the municipality. So it's not binding in the sense that it has to move forward. But if that development that is identified in the future is going to occur, is going to get built, then these other things have to get done with it. These other policies have to be followed. And everything that the city does with regards to growth and policies has to be in alignment with what the OCP says. Until such time as you do a new OCP update, you can't just veer off and do something different. So it'll also, some of the other mandatory elements, housing policies, greenhouse gas reduction targets for the community. Those are mandatory elements of the OCP that we're going to see coming out soon when that's presented to council and the community. There are also optional components to an OCP, and that's where the accessibility piece comes in, because under the province's regulations, the city can optionally include policies related to social needs, things like accessibility, age-friendly committees. So we'll see when the draft OCP comes out, what kind of recommendations and policies it's going to present. Each level of strategic planning has a community feedback component where there's engagement, opportunity for public comment, and then the plan can be changed before it's brought forth for final things. So if we see things we don't like in the plans, or if we see things missing, that's the public opportunity to come forward and say, this is important, the city should include and address these things. Then at the next level below the official community plans are the master plans, which I'm leading for the city. And these are multiple discrete plans that are focused either around departments or around major services like drinking water, wastewater, parks, things like that. And a little bit more specific focus, higher level of detail than what the OCP gets into. And importantly, it's more comprehensive in the sense that it doesn't just look at growth. So for example, the OCP is going to be more focused on new communities we develop. What do they need? Or when we're going to redevelop a community. But what about communities that are existing and we don't have plans for growth there, that we may not feel meet what we think the standards should be today for accessibility or for traffic or for safety or for adequate water supply. So the master plans look at not just the growth component, but what our existing communities look like and what goals and priorities we have for upgrading and improving those. And they get a little bit more, the master plans get more into the actual, how much is going to cost and when we're going to do it. So proposing timelines to council for endorsement of budgeting actual discrete amounts of money for specific projects. So that's the kind of stuff you see in the master plans that we're going to be developing. We have been working on for the past year and we'll be continuing to develop this year. And having said that, your master plan is not the final step in planning a project. So a master plan may have a concept and a high level budget and approximate timing for a new park that's needed. But it's not going to say the park's going to be exactly this big. It's going to have this many benches. It's going to have a playground or not have a playground. Specific implementation plans need to be done before you actually go to build things for each specific individual project. So that's sort of the third level of planning. But it's really the upper tiers where we get the most public engagement input. And really, once you're done at that third level, it's primarily like staff have been given a mandate to proceed with that. There'll still be consultation, but it's not, they're trying to interpret what has already been given to them by the other higher levels of planning and incorporate that into the project. So this slide is just giving us the status of the master plans that the city has taken on. So we've got a number of the master plan projects are already in progress. Some of them have remained to be started. So it's sort of a staggered start approach, overlapping projects, not all at the same stage. So for example, the fire services master plan project is nearly complete. The final report is being presented to City of Port Alberni Council or Committee of the Whole this coming Monday for comment and discussion. Parks, Recreation and Culture Departmental Master Plan. We're nearly complete the first of 3 phases. So that's the phase where we try to understand current conditions, gauge what's important to the community through first round engagement and get their feedback on, what's working and not working now about the programs and facilities that Parks, Recreation and Culture manage. And then other projects that are still earlier in the process, Transportation Master Plan and the Stormwater and Combined Sewer Master Plan are both in progress, but still moving through phase 1. And we haven't yet started our round 1 public engagement for those. I'm thinking the Parks, Rec and Culture Master Plan and the Transportation Master Plan are the ones where accessibility is going to come into play the most and be the most relevant to what the contents of the plans are going to be. So I'll talk a little bit more about just those 2 plans in particular. Parks, Recreation and Culture Master Plan. As part of that project, we completed in the fall a sub-project of facility condition assessments. So I should explain that the Parks, Recreation and Culture Department at Port Alberni includes a pretty large portfolio of infrastructure and services, parks, natural areas, boulevards, like street side boulevards, tree planting, our sports fields, recreational programming, indoor recreational facilities. It also includes the management of almost all of our other city-owned buildings, including all the publicly open buildings like the City Hall, RCMP, public safety buildings. So this master plan encompasses those buildings as well that provide services to the public. And then trails, multi-use paths all fall under this department and this master plan. So the facility condition assessments that we completed recently were important for understanding condition of facilities, where we need to make investments to just keep what we have. And also that information will be useful in determining what facilities are getting to the point where, if we're considering something new, something expanded, something more up to code, you know, you can compare the alternatives of this is how much it will cost to keep this building as it is versus replacing it with something new and perhaps at a higher level of service. So that'll provide important, cost understanding and building lifestyle, remaining life, service life for all those existing facilities. We also completed the phase 1 community engagement for that master plan through September and October, and that included an open house drop-in center that we had at Echo, a public survey to gauge and get feedback on existing programs and services, and also to find out what the community's priorities are in terms of needs or improvements. And then we had a number of interest group meetings directly with groups that use our facilities regularly, particularly for recreation purposes. And we had another ideas submission portal on our Let's Connect website. So right now we're in the process of reporting out on the outcome of that phase 1 engagement. That's going to be coming up soon. It'll become public when it goes to City Council in the next few weeks. And then we're looking forward to bringing to the community in May and June draft strategies, plans, policies for Parks, Rec, and Culture for community feedback and to get buy-in on the things that we think need to be done to address VOCP and the public feedback we've gotten and other contributing information like the city accessibility plan. And then we're looking at so second round of engagement there before finalizing the plan later in the year, having final comments and trying to wrap up and have an adopted plan with an actual budget and schedule for major projects going 10 years forward. I'll give you a little sneak peek about some of the accessibility related results that we got through community engagement. So we did have a pretty high level of engagement considering the size of our community. We had 432 survey responses. 96 people contributed ideas through the online portal. And we had 25 different community interest groups participated in the meetings, the workshop meetings. We also have probably close to 200 people stop by our stations at the open house and provide input and feedback to the team. So a few of the things we learned from the surveys and other engagement, 35% of survey respondents identified accessibility for all ages and abilities as a most important value and principle for the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Department and our programs. On the ranking of community needs that the largest number of people identified, it was newer improved washroom facilities, public washroom facilities. 28% of people who responded to the survey identified that as one of the most pressing needs for the community. We had other respondent input on need for accessible playgrounds, need for low barrier washrooms and change rooms, and need for improvements to our many steep trails and just in general providing more trails that are usable by people of all ages and abilities. So some of the things that can be encompassed in the master plan when we present the draft for public feedback with things like standards for new or replaced facilities and parks, what kind of goals we want to meet in regards to accessibility for when we're building new. But we also may want to set targets for addressing deficiencies at facilities that we don't have plans to replace or build new. All of these things have a cost, and we need to present to the community different options of timelines and guidelines and also estimate the costs of implementing those so the community can make a decision on, how aggressive they want to be in tackling these goals and how much they want to focus on when we're building new things versus addressing existing older problems, and also what areas of the community or types of facilities are higher priorities to address. So as I said, once we present those in round two, we'll be looking for feedback from the community at large, interest groups. Hopefully the accessibility committee as well will provide feedback and comments on our draft planning for that program. The transportation master plan that started last summer, we completed traffic data collection in the fall. So we had instrumentation installed at I think about 15 different key intersections throughout the city for a period of a week on two different periods, I think August and September, and tracked the numbers of trucks, pedestrians, bicycles, cars that move through those intersections. So we can use that data for seeing how heavily used our traffic corridors are now, and we can use that information to predict once we have growth in the areas that the OCP says we're going to have growth. What are those numbers going to look like? We can forecast that and determine where we're going to have problem areas with excessive traffic or higher safety risks, or intersections that need priority upgrades because of added load of traffic and increased frequency of conflict between vehicles and pedestrians. So the transportation master plan covers city-owned roads, sidewalks, bridges, active transportation infrastructure, intersections and traffic controls, crosswalks, parking, truck routes, and our bus stops. And we'll be going very soon. We'll be starting our round one of public engagement with similar concept to what we did with Parks, Rec, and Culture, which is through various tools, we're going to try and engage the community to give us their feedback through surveys and open houses and invitation for written comment, so we can gauge what the community thinks are the priorities and problems that most need to be addressed in future. And then when we have the OCP, that'll give us the information we need to analyze what kind of transportation improvements do we need specifically to support planned residential and industrial commercial growth. So some of the things accessibility related that the transportation master plan may address will be, again, things like, guidelines for new infrastructure. So if we are going to extend or upgrade a road, what do we want the standards to be in regards to accessibility that we always follow on new construction? And then secondly, for existing infrastructure that we don't have immediate plans to upgrade or replace, do we want to set targets and goals for or priority locations for where we most need upgrades to address accessibility issues in those areas as well? Accessibility parking design standards, just the amount of accessible parking that the city provides. These are examples of types of goals we can set. Are there specific crosswalks or intersections which are more important due to level of use and level of hazard that they warrant early investment in upgrading to make them more accessible and safe? And then the other thing we'll be doing as part of that project in the spring is a road condition assessment. And that's more related to the condition of the paving, doing a survey of all our roads so we can kind of prioritize which ones most need upgrades. And the relevance there with regards to accessibility is in terms of strategic use of budget, it's best to align projects for different purposes into the same corridors. So if a road if you've got several roads that need accessibility or active transportation or other improvements, and one of them has really bad pavement condition, it obviously makes strategic sense to do that one first. So that information is going to be useful to prioritizing and planning our future years, recommended budgets for those types of projects. So right now we're in the process of identifying specific groups within the community and in some cases the province, if there's no local equivalent group that we should specifically be reaching out to in the next month or so to invite them to participate either through written input or through actual in-person workshop meetings. So I put up just for food for thought for the community. Here are some of the ones we've already identified. This isn't necessarily a complete list, but certainly we're not claiming to know everyone that we should be talking to. And, you know, part of the reason for doing engagement and social media advertisement and traditional media advertisement is to draw attention to the fact that we're going to do this project and have people come forward and say, hey, this is really relevant to our organization. We think we should be involved, or we'd like to make sure we get an opportunity to provide input. So we really want people to contact us, not just wait for us to find them, because we hate when we get to the end of a planning process and we find out some important group that wasn't even on our radar is just seeing the plan at the final stages. We do have the input from the city's accessibility plan, so it has some fairly high-level guidelines for us to implement. One thing I will note is that that plan came out after these projects went to request for proposals and were scoped, and we hired consultants for them. That happened before the city's accessibility plan came out. So we aren't necessarily in complete alignment between our scope, and the one item I will highlight is the city has a recommendation in their plan to do an assessment of all our city facilities, parks, infrastructure, et cetera, to identify accessibility issues and priorities. That's not part of our current project scope. That doesn't mean it couldn't be, but that would be an additional project that's a lot of time and money. So there would have to be some commitment and direction from council for us to add that component. Otherwise, we're just going to be basing our work on existing readily available information. We do have park audits from Spark BC for, I think, 9 city parks. We have some information for other facilities, but we certainly don't have a comprehensive citywide report telling us, here's the report card of all our intersections, buildings, parks, recreational facilities that say, here's what's wrong with them. Here's what's good, to be able to incorporate into priorities. So right now we're going to be relying more on the public feedback and input we get to tell us where those priorities are and where the biggest problems are. We could enhance the project if we had a separate side project similar to the facilities condition assessment to do more comprehensive assessment of our specific sites across town. On my last slide here, I've just provided the web link to the master planning page. There is a project-specific page right now for Parks, Recreation, and Culture that you can reach through this page. And very soon there will also be a separate project page for transportation and for stormwater. But you'll be able to reach all of them through that main link. And lastly, the master plans at portalbernie.ca email address is a city address that we created for public input on all the master plans. So any communications you see us putting out looking for feedback on any of the plans, you'll see this email address. And at any time, even if we're not actively advertising, we're looking for input, people can provide input, or groups can provide input at any time to that address. It will get read and it will get considered by the team. And that's all I have. Thanks for your time. But if there's any questions, I can.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. That was really enlightening. Just a note before I go to questions is, could we get a copy of the presentation sent to everybody? And this way we have it in front of us instead of trying to take pictures or make notes there. Just a couple of things. When you talk about engagement, I'm just gonna load you with my little talk, questions first. Engagement for, there's also not just the Sunshine Club when we talk about, elderly people. There's the, Rainbow Gardens, there's, and other senior homes in that. And for Park Echo, maybe talk to the staff there because a lot of them are, they're able to go around and about in our facilities, so it might be worthwhile to engage something with them. And also, when we talk about transportation, I'm looking at, when you're looking at a larger picture, do you also look at the tree, the sidewalks with the trees and that they're planted and the sidewalks are lifting up? So there's a lot of accessibility issues when you see, especially when you see scooters go and they have to sort of go on a sidewalk sort of sideways. And there's a few times that I have driven by somebody on a scooter and I'm almost thinking that they're going to tip over even in a wheelchair because of the way the tree roots have lifted up the sidewalk. I know it's a cost for the city and stuff like that, but that should be something we look into as if we have to dig up something in that area, what do we do there? How do we mitigate that? The trees, what we plant in near our sidewalks and will that be included? Like what kind of trees? That's not going to go into our infrastructure or anybody that has scooters or wheelchairs or just trying to get by them. And also another thing too, if you look at some of the infrastructure, like the old hydro poles that are blocking half of the sidewalk. So you have to kind of get around. And I know it's not the city's problem, it's BC Hydro. Would that be captured in the master plan too?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. I can, in the specific case of hydro poles, that is something that the team has specifically tagged as something important to address. And one of the outcomes of the transportation master plan will be for street construction or street rehabilitation. What are the guidelines and cross sections of those streets going to look like, which will include hydro pole placement. What it may not automatically address unless there is enough of a priority identified by the community is plans to try to get poles moved where we're not already upgrading a street. That could be on the table, but that would be something that would require further investment. It would be sort of a separate recommendation on its own. But if we had enough indication that those were enough of a problem that we shouldn't be waiting for a street to have to be upgraded to try and move them for safety, it could be a recommendation for consideration. And in the case of the sidewalks and trees, those are certainly the types of things that could appear in a master plan. I should explain that there's not one single template, a list of things that each of these master plans will produce. They're going to vary between communities and what ends up being in there and not being in there. But it's primarily going to be driven by either the public or council or interest groups or other committees advising that this is important, this should be a priority, the plan needs to address this. So tree planting types of species so far has not come up as anything that resonated greatly in the first round of engagement. But the plan is still ongoing. We're still developing plans, so it still could become one if we had enough people, bring that forward as an issue that this is definitely a problem. It's an accessibility issue. It should be a priority. Then that could be brought into the plan. Sidewalk maintenance, which ties in with that as well. That's definitely on the table as for the transportation master plan, as far as putting forward options for what could be guidelines or targets or our levels of tolerance for how bad a sidewalk can get before we fix it, or how aggressively we address going and fixing existing ones. Anything from let's budget for next year to fix all the ones we can find in the city versus let's set a goal of over 5 years, fixing those. So really, master plans are intended to present different options for the community to give their feedback on priority and which is most important. And it's definitely within the scope of what a master plan could include.
All right, it's just that, especially around Stampen, Roger, I just find that with all the lighting boxes that are there or electrical boxes, as well as the sidewalk and how narrow the sidewalk is, and you can't widen some of these sidewalks because of the hydro poles and different infrastructure that's around there. So I just watch the people crossing it. So I have concerns on that. I've always had concerns on that. Same as crosswalks being painted. And I know we have a schedule for painting them, and what we've done in the city for crosswalks right now, amazing. I was really impressed. I had to drive by one time when I first saw them out and go, oh my God. You know, I like what we've done, but we haven't captured all our sidewalks on major highways and stuff like that because they're starting to fade. And I know there's a schedule, and I understand you can't paint in the winter and stuff like that. Totally agree. So but I do believe the roots and the trees and what trees are being planted going forward, we need to start looking at what are we planting on there, same as plant boxes and stuff like that. So I'm going to go to the committee first. I know there's somebody in the audience that would like to ask a question. So we'll go to the committee members and okay, Vida, do you want to go ahead?
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, David, for that very clear description of the planning process and the opportunities for input. I found it really helpful. And I did just want to make an observation that sometimes it's difficult for the public to navigate to where they can put their input when they're having difficulties. And I was wondering if perhaps the Accessibility Committee could consider implementing a tip line where people who are experiencing difficulty navigating the parks, recreation, transportation system could notify the Accessibility Committee, and we can kind of look into it and act as a resource for addressing difficulties. But again, thank you so much for this presentation. I found it really helpful.
All right, thank you. And Heather has a comment.
Thank you. Maybe Dave, I could just get you to stop sharing your presentation. Veda, we do actually have an accessibility form on the regional district website, and I believe the city has a link to it on their website. So it allows anybody experiencing a barrier, whether it's in the regional district or the city, to share that information with us. So if it's in the city, it'll go to Sarah, and if it's in the regional district, that'll come to me, and then we can address that. So that does exist. It's on the regional district website, and after the meeting, I'll share the link with the committee members.
Thank you so much. And I'm just wondering if possibly we could get some signage on the buses to that effect, where the link is.
Yeah, we can look into that.
That's a really good idea. Anybody else have questions? Nope, seeing none. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
Hi. David, it's more just a comment. I was just looking at this slide number 7 for resources. The Port Alberni Association for Children with Developmental Disabilities. I don't think that actually exists unless it's in Pennsylvania. I Googled it, but it might be PACL, the Port Alberni Association for Community Living. Just might want to update the slide. It's going to be shared more broadly.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Any other questions? No? Okay, so we'll ask the audience member to come up. Do you want to come up and ask a question? Just give your name and where you are located. Thank you. Yep.
Hi, my name is Sybil McLean. I live in Beaver Creek. My question is, why is there not a group for parents with children with disabilities or youth groups for children with disabilities here? I have twins who are autistic and ADHD and dyslexic, we moved from Qualicum where we were really well supported, and here it's just kind of dismal, to be honest. So are there resources that I haven't found in the last 2 years that I've been here, or is there a reason for that?
I see Nicole has an answer for you, so go ahead, Nicole.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get your first name, but through the Port Alberni Association for Community Living, there's several children's services. And they're available to the public. You don't need a referral through the Ministry of Children and Family Development. And I'm happy to share, or someone there can share our contact information if you want to reach out to our organization, and I can try to connect you with our children's services and the many available groups within the Alberni Valley.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Do you have another question? Heather will share that information with you, so don't go away, and she'll give you her contact number and everything. Okay. Do you have any other questions? Okay, and welcome to Port Alberni. How long you've been here? Welcome. All right. Anybody else? Any other questions? No? And her name was Sybil, just so you know. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Come on down. We'll just adjust the mic there. And just your name. I know you've been here before, so we'll just, for the rest of the committee.
I was wondering, just for the master plan, addressing sidewalks, like so many sidewalks end in an abrupt 90-degree angle, and it's incredibly difficult for one person to use a sidewalk if they don't have like an attendant. Is it included in your master plan to make sure that it has like appropriate slopes that aren't, like, have you considered like what a wheelchair accessible slope needs to be safe to like get onto and off of a sidewalk?
So through the chair, so I guess there's two sides to that. There's the new construction, which we definitely do have already. The city has begun adopting modern standards for when we're building new. What the master plan could address, and again, the master plan doesn't exist yet. We're gathering the information to start to develop the plan, and input like this is what we need to gauge those priorities. So the master plan could include various levels of recommendations or guidelines for addressing those curves. We are aware that the majority of our pedestrian infrastructure existing is not doesn't meet current accessibility standards. The question is where, how much do we want to invest? How much do the community support investing in addressing existing ones? And what are the priorities? Where are the locations or corridors where that would be most important? And that kind of information we would want to gather to be able to present options here to the community in a draft plan.
And do you want to just give me your name and where you're from? Which area?
Yeah, my name is Kat Belisle, and I'm in Port Alberni.
Any other questions, Kevin?
I do have a couple questions, but I know that they have to, I don't know if they're like, if I need to put them in the agenda.
No,
ahead of
just go
time.
ahead and ask.
So I'd already been asking Heather, basically doing what was initially brought up is like when I experienced like an inaccessible barrier, I've brought it up, which has been great. You've always like addressed them. But just, I wonder, and I know it's not like exactly this area, but is there any way or any plan in the future to help make like funding available for either like businesses to create accessible spaces, especially like medical buildings, like that, or just generally like the sidewalks that are really inaccessible? I know you want to prioritize like the specific areas, but just generally, what is the plan moving forward to help create Port Alberni to become more accessible as a whole? Because it's actually extremely difficult to be in a wheelchair in Port Alberni.
David, that would be in a master plan of maybe planning or building, or what would that be under?
To the chair, I guess would say that the master plans that the city is preparing are focused on city-owned infrastructure, city-owned programs. If we were talking about improvements on private side property, that would be outside of the scope of the master plans. Not necessarily outside of the scope of the city. It just may fall under some different planning bucket or department. But really, these master plans are about plans for the road infrastructure that we own. What do we want to change? What are we going to program in for building? I guess I would add one thing though. This sort of relates to what you're suggesting. In cases where we are developing or growing an area. So, for example, if this area is identified in the official community plan as a growth area where we're going to increase density, the OCP can set requirements for, in order for this community to grow, one of the things we need, along with improved roads, schools, parks, whatever, is all of these streets now need to meet accessibility, certain accessibility standards. And once that's built into the OCP as a guiding principle, the city doesn't even have the authority to go forward and greenlight those buildings and new developments unless they're in line with what the OCP said we're going to do. The conditions of, we're only going to allow this growth, approve this intensity if somebody also builds this. So that portion would tie into the OCP, not just the master plans. It would be important feedback for that.
Heather?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to your question, Kat. You had asked me about the funding for businesses, and the funding that I'm familiar with is for government or for individuals to make modifications to their homes. I'm not aware of any funding for individual businesses to create more accessible spaces. There are some recent changes to the BC Building Code for accessibility standards. So new builds will certainly need to be accessible for medical buildings, that type of thing. But that doesn't help you in terms of what's already existing. I think what we do and the intent of this committee is to raise awareness and to build culture of accessibility. And I think it will take time, but we are working on that. The government has created the Accessibility Act, and other organizations are also required to create accessibility plans like the school district. So I think over time, accessibility will become more forefront. But I can appreciate that from a person in a wheelchair that it is difficult currently.
Well, yeah, like I said, the MRI is not wheelchair
Yeah.
accessible in Port Alberni, so I had to go to Nanaimo.
Yeah.
I know that's not the city, but it seems like something that should be a priority. Yeah. My children's school is not wheelchair accessible, so I can't participate in any sort of, I don't know. Yeah, it's frustrating. I also know that right now, Port Alberni, Banfield, Tofino, all of the West Coast doesn't have a single occupational therapist that works with VHA, and they're the only person that can approve funding for any sort of mobility aids. And that's seems like this major hardship and crisis within Port Alberni, because no one in this community, I've waited 2 years to get a wheelchair. I'm still waiting. And I wish that could be something that's prioritized. And I don't know. Yeah, I know this is out of the scope, but there's so many barriers in Port Alberni that this feels like one of the only outlets for me to come forward to. And I just wish there was more outlets for people who are disabled to share where the hardship is, because if you're an able-bodied person, you'd have no idea that you don't get a wheelchair if you're disabled in person. Whereas other communities, if I lived in Qualicum Beach, I would be entitled to a wheelchair, but that service is not available in Port Alberni.
Yeah.
And no one would know unless you know someone
That's right.
who's disabled.
Can I just add to that? We did invite Marcy DeWitt. So Marcy is our coordinator for the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network, and the health concerns that you've raised with me, I've shared those with Marcy. Marcy runs the health network, and it's made up of a lot of people within Island Health. So yeah, I don't think that our committee is the right avenue, but that's why we've invited Marcy, is to sort of be that sort of link between us and the health network, and maybe we can invite Marcy to share a little bit.
Exactly, that's where I was heading to. Marcy, do you want to make a comment? And maybe you can meet up with Kat at some point, and we can get her contact information or share your contact information with her, and how can she come and talk to you and stuff like that? How does that sound? Go ahead,
Sure.
Marcy.
Thanks, Cindy. We have been following up on a few of these. So Heather has pushed these along to the health network. We've brought them to the table, as well as just started kind of, I guess, going down the lines of the Island Health communications pieces. So we have escalated the MRI ramp situation at the West Coast General Hospital, as well as just discussing with some of our Island Health folks around some of the recruitment and retention barriers that they're facing. So those are all pieces that we can bring forward. They're slow. I still haven't heard anything back around the MRI ramp, but we are just kind of utilizing all of our Island Health contacts in order to start escalating some of the things that we're hearing from Heather and other folks within this committee. And I'm happy to be here listening and continuing to make those connections. So literally sending an email every 2 weeks and just trying to make sure that we keep that at the forefront. There's not much that we can do around assisting to get the folks that we need hired. There's also speech pathologists that we're missing in many of our communities, that is causing a pretty big barrier in many of our societies, but we're keeping that at the forefront as best as we can. So keep bringing them forward.
So the health network is open to the public. A member of the public can attend, so maybe we can get a date, and maybe where Kat could attend a health network meeting and voice her concerns there too. So Kat, you might talk with Heather afterwards and she can let you know. Also, the issue with the school, have you contacted the school board and talked to them too about your issues?
I have, I actually, I think we really got it in some sort of like basically it's just like having but
okay. So what Kat is saying, because you're not on mic there, is yes, she has, but either she moved schools, there's not much there that she can advocate to. So it's something, do you want to carry on and speak your own thoughts there?
So for example, I can't drive and I need my kids to get to school, and there's like a bus service for the school, but I'm not in the exact catchment and they won't make an exception. And there's like no services for like a disabled mother to access to get their kids to school. And like that's something I've been talking with the school board and like with the like bus services, and then like also Handy Dart, but like they'll only accept me and not my kids on the Handy Dart. It's like it's impossible. It's like I feel like it's, yeah, there's no seems like there's no options, and I've kind of I can only focus on a couple things at once, and I've kind of just like put the school access aside and just hope that they can get to the high school where it's more accessible and they have a bus service essentially. But yeah, as it is, schools don't really work with, unless your child is disabled, but like they certainly wouldn't do anything for like a parent trying to, who needs help with their kids getting or like getting into the school. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Anybody have any more comments? Yes.
Nicole.
Oh, sorry, Nicole, I didn't see you up there. Okay, Nicole.
Thank you. It's really disheartening to hear these things, but also good that we are aware of some people's lived experience. I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity through the business community, through the chamber, to bring some awareness just from the business community. And there are accessibility grants available to a lot of nonprofits in BC. It's certainly something that we have taken advantage of within our organization. So I just made a couple of notes here and see if we can do more, you know, just by raising awareness and maybe involving some of the business community as well.
Thank you there. Anybody else? No, okay, David, thank you very much for the great presentation. I really enjoyed that presentation. Okay, let's carry on. So we're going to go to the Spark grant update. Heather?
Thank you. So at the last committee in December, the committee supported applying for a grant for accessibility training for the regional district. And I just wanted to announce that we were successful in receiving that grant. So we have received $25,000 for training of a regional district staff, as well as developing some policy work. So staff will be working towards creating a request for proposal to hire a contractor to deliver that training. Nicole has graciously shared a couple of experienced contractors that she's aware of in the Powell River area, so we'll reach out to them. So that training will be delivered part of this year, later this year, and that was one of the recommendations that came out of the regional district's accessibility plan. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Does anybody have any questions? No, and thank you for that, Heather. Okay, ACRD, accessible events checklist, Heather.
Thank you. Sybil, I'll reach out through Kat to get your contact information and I'll connect that with you. Yeah. Okay, so the next item is I'm sharing a draft accessibility events checklist with the committee, and I'm requesting your feedback. So where are my notes? So this was another recommendation that came out of our accessibility plan, was to create an accessibility checklist so that regional district staff and contractors, when planning events, so that could be community engagement, a celebration, training, that these events are actually accessible to anybody that wants to attend. So I have pulled this information from several other documents, so I didn't create this myself, but I've put together what I think is important. So I'm sharing it with you today. It's very much a draft. I'm looking for feedback, so you can either provide that today at this committee, or you can email me with your feedback. I'm also meeting with the Canadian Council of the Blind on March 5th, and I'm going to request their input on the same thing. I'll also be asking for staff input on this. So yeah, I'll just stop there. I just really highlight that it's draft, and I'm looking for your input.
Committee members, anybody have any input, anything they want to say at this moment? Go ahead, Dana.
I just want to thank Heather very much for the proactive actions that she's been taking in order to bring accessibility to the forefront. And I think, yeah, I think people just get disheartened and give up on thinking that any change will happen. And so to have your fresh input and eyes on this, I'm hoping that things will be more proactive in the future. And thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? No? Thank you very much for that. And if you have any, if you want to take it back to your organization, feel free to come back and get in touch with Heather about what the document. And I just want to welcome Councillor Charles Mealy in the audience too, from Port Alberni, the city of Port Alberni. I know he wants to be incognito. Sorry, I just kind of have to find a little page here. Where am I here? Okay, the next one is, what am I missing? Oh, yes, thank you. I'm looking at a different page. So next is the regional transit update and accessible bus shelters. Go ahead. Who's going to do that? Is that okay? And
I think that's going to be me.
yep, you go right ahead.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody. Heather asked me to stop by and just discuss a few things that are transit related and very relevant to this committee. As we move forward, first of all, a little just about my background. I came to the ACRD via BC Transit, specifically Victoria Handy Dart. I was an operator there for 13 years, and it was really my most rewarding job that I've ever had. I think the experiences on a day-to-day basis shape who I am today and are still the ones that I take the most satisfaction from. I myself have a hidden disability, so it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know until you know. And I really realize now how much each and everything means to those that have a certain disability. So as we move forward with the West Coast Transit Service, the ACRD first took it on looking to kind of as an interim service waiting for BC Transit to come on board. So the focus was on really getting the wheels turning on the buses, to getting the people moving on the West Coast. And accessibility really wasn't one of those things that we focused on. And now that we have BC Transit coming on board, so the service transfers over to BC Transit as of March 1st, we now have the ability to take a step back and look at infrastructure. And hopefully in the next little while, grant dependent, we can move forward with the start of our bus shelter installation project. This project will give us the opportunity to really look at the transit stops and the infrastructure around the transit stops to make sure that they are accessible for all. So that new infrastructure will be able to make sure that we meet the ADA standards, for slope of boarding, areas to and from the shelter, dimensions within the shelter, knee and toe clearances, etc. Just ensure that we'll have room to maneuver and everybody will have the opportunity to use the shelters as they are designed to be used. So we have that in the kind of, we're starting that project, and really as we start now, we're able to really come to you as the committee and make sure that we are meeting the needs, and you have your say in the design and the installation of these bus shelters in the project moving forward. A couple of other kind of relevant pieces with BC Transit coming on board, we'll have the annunciators. So on the buses, as a human rights mandate, we will have the announcing of all the stops as we approach, which of course for those visually impaired is a huge boost for the system. Again, you don't know what you don't know, and my father being visually impaired now and can't see, you really know how important that is. So we'll have that and BC Transit coming on board, and Director Siga, you made the note about potentially putting a note on the buses about where we can speak to about the committee, and I'll take that back to BC Transit right away and try and get that moving. Also, regional transit wise, we're in the midst of finalizing a regional transit study, working towards the finalization. It's the study that keeps on going. But one of those is the regional transit aspects that is talked about, and within the draft report, we'll really speak to that piece about connection and connectivity to outside of the Alberni Valley and to hopefully Qualicum Beach and the regional district in Nanaimo as next steps in that. So we'll have a draft report coming in the next few months. It's just taken some time to get through the last rounds of engagement, but that will be coming, and that is a piece that's at the forefront of that study, is looking towards that connectivity. So that's really all I have for this report, and happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Questions? Anybody have any questions? I do. On the bus shelter, I'm really glad about the bus shelters. I think they're really important. And so a wheelchair will be able to wheel in to the bus shelter. I mean, we've had people in the Alberni Valley mention about it's raining, I can't take my wheelchair into a shelter because it's all one bench, right? So will there be something for wheelchairs?
So thank you for that question through the chair. Yeah, it's a great point. So I just want to clarify that I'm focusing now, it's not really on Port Alberni. I'm focusing on the West Coast Transit Service because the city of Port Alberni looks into that. For the West Coast Transit Service, that's definitely when we're designing the stops and locations. We'll be doing everything we can with the shelter being installed to make sure that they're accessible for all, following the standards. So room to maneuver, able to approach and wheel yourself in, taking into account, more than one bench and making sure there's room within the shelter for everybody to use it.
Okay, sorry, I look into Port Alberni, but region wise, yes, I think that's great. So especially in the West Coast area. Anybody else have questions?
I have a question.
Go right ahead, Amber.
Do you have contact with BC Transit? Like, is that one of your links? Because I'm just wondering, because the previous person that had us was talking about accessibility and not being able to bring children on the handy dart. And like, if there's someone, like if you're the person that has links or has connections to BC Transit, that feels like something that's a provincial thing that could help a lot of people. If you're a parent and you have to take the handy dart, you should be able to bring your children.
Absolutely, Amber, and thank you through the chair. Yes, I've already sent a text. So I have contacts in the BC Transit. I have a lot of friends within there, and one of the jobs when I went over to BC Transit was the start of working within the operations team, but really being handy dart focused, given my background. I know they have just designed a new position internally to look at accessibility and to have a more so operations staff 100% handy dart focused. And I will be getting in touch with them. And I think this is a conversation that we need to have. It's important because there are, as was just described, there are so many aspects of transportation that isn't just the one person who needs it. It's the blanket, the envelope, it's the umbrella of all the people related, right?
Thank you. Amber, any follow-up or are you good? Okay, next, Beta.
I just want to say thank you so much, Daddy, for all of his work to get bus service out on the West Coast. And it's kind of neat that with new services, we can look at the accessibility and make the new buildings and streets accessible. So it's, very proactive. And I was just wondering if there is, like, I get lots of complaints about what is actually, I guess, the Ministry of Transportation's issues, in that the roads themselves are hazardous. And I'm really not sure if the ministry has sort of like a tip line to contact them and say, like, this is a problem area. And if they don't, they really need to. Rather than going through all these other levels of government. Maybe you can comment on that, Eddie.
Yeah, thank you, Director Siga, and through the chair. Absolutely. So we do have regularly quarterly meetings with the Ministry of Transportation and Transit now that they've switched to MOTT. It doesn't have quite the same ring to it as MOTI. But we have the ability to kind of make those communications. If anything is brought to your attention, we can kind of be that link. I'm not sure if they do have a tip line per se, but I can also reach out to our ministry contact and kind of see what they would recommend and what would be the best avenue.
Follow up, you're good. Thank you, Eddie. Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that information. And now I'll entertain a motion that we receive reports A to D. Somebody want to move that? Beta, and second? And second by Jamie. All anybody opposed? We're just omitting the other one because everybody, yeah. Okay, motion carried. Next, late business and emergency. And that is you, Nicole, I believe, isn't it? No, who was that?
It was
That
Amber.
Amber, sorry, Amber. Go right ahead.
Yeah. Just when those fires were happening in LA, there was a lot of talk on the news about people who died because their emergency plan didn't take into account people with disabilities or needing like support to evacuate. So I'm just a curious question. do the communities of the ACRD have that as part of like their emergency planning, taking into account people who might need help in evacuation times?
Heather.
Yeah, thanks, Amber. One of the recommendations in our accessibility plan, and it's probably in the cities as well, is related to emergency planning. Just says we will incorporate accessibility into emergency planning, public education campaigns, and how residents and visitors with disabilities can access emergency services, and how neighbors can support fellow residents with disabilities in the event of an emergency. So that's something that we have acknowledged, but I would say that we haven't started working on that. So what I might suggest is potentially for a future committee meeting is to invite our emergency staff to speak to this item. That's of interest to you.
I think that's a very important thing. So let's invite them. I'm sure the rest of the committee would agree with that. And anybody else have any questions? Thank you for bringing that up. That topic up. Okay, let's move to any more late business. I know it's not on the agenda, but anybody else have anything else? No. Okay, question period. Do we have anybody online? There's no. Charles? No. Anybody online? Nope. Okay. Participating in Zoom. Okay, nobody's online, so we're going to go on. Okay, and move for adjournment. Who wants to move that? Oh, look at that. Everybody's hands go up now. Okay. And second, you can pick who you want. Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you, everybody. Appreciate everybody coming. We had a quorum, which was a wonderful, and we'll see you next time. Do we have a date for next time?
We do. I just don't have it right in front of me.
Oops, we'll send that out. And staff, anything else? No?
No.
Okay. Have a wonderful afternoon, you guys.
Thanks,
Take care.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good meeting. Thank you.